Chief Scientific Observer Sylith adjusted her crystalline sensory matrices as she studied the holographic display before her. 200 years of experience analyzing pre-spacefaring civilizations had taught her patience, but something about the readings from Sol 3's orbital defense grid made her inner chambers pulse with excitement. "Display temporal variance analysis," she commanded. The ship's AI complied instantly, projecting a complex web of interconnected energy signatures that seemed to defy conventional physics. The human vessels appeared to exist in a state of quantum flux, their power signatures simultaneously present and absent, their mass readings fluctuating between impossible extremes. "Fascinating," she whispered, her crystalline form casting prismatic patterns across the observation deck. "They've achieved something unprecedented." Chief Observer, her second-in-command, Rethan, interrupted. His gelatinous form rippled with concern. The Council explicitly restricted detailed scanning of human military vessels after the Centauri incident. Sylith's outer crystal layers hardened slightly, the equivalent of a dismissive frown. "The Centauri incident was 3 Earth years ago, Rethan. Their technology was barely understood then. Now," she gestured at the readings, "they're implementing principles that should be centuries beyond their development." "Which is precisely why the Council advises caution," Rethan countered. "The last research vessel that attempted deep scanning of a human warship reported catastrophic sensor failures. Their quantum arrays were corrupted beyond repair." Sylith rotated toward her subordinate, her crystalline structure refracting light in patterns that indicated deep thought. "Have you studied the human information networks? Their entertainment broadcasts?" Rethan's gelatinous form rippled in confusion. "I fail to see the relevance." "They're obsessed with the impossible," Sylith continued. "Their fiction constantly explores concepts that should be beyond their comprehension. And yet," she manipulated the holographic display, highlighting a human destroyer's energy signature. "They're achieving things that our finest theoretical physicists claim cannot be done." The observation deck fell silent as both aliens studied the readings. The human vessel's power core seemed to operate on principles that violated fundamental laws of physics. Its quantum signature suggested it existed in multiple states simultaneously, yet remained perfectly stable. "I've submitted a proposal to the Council," Sylith announced. "The research vessel Eternal Inquiry will conduct a detailed analysis of human military technology. We'll maintain a safe distance, of course." Rethan's form rippled with alarm. "Chief Observer, I must formally register my objection. The humans have made it clear they consider military vessel scanning an act of aggression." "They're a young species," Sylith countered, her crystalline structure gleaming with determination. "Barely 3 centuries into faster-than-light travel. Whatever they've discovered, it cannot be beyond our comprehension." A soft chime interrupted their discussion. The ship's AI projected a new hologram, a formal communication from the Galactic Science Council. Sylith's outer layers vibrated with anticipation as she absorbed the message. "Approved," she announced, her voice resonating through her crystal form. "We depart for Sol system in 30 standard units. Prepare the advanced scanning arrays." "Chief Observer," Rethan tried one final time. "Perhaps we should review the Centauri incident reports more thoroughly. The damage to their systems wasn't just technical. They reported temporal anomalies, reality distortions. Precisely why we must understand it." Sylith interrupted. "The humans have discovered something fundamental about the nature of reality itself, something that makes their military vessels effectively invisible to our most advanced scanning technology." Her crystal structure pulsed with excitement. "Think of the implications, Rethan. Think of what we could learn." As the Eternal Inquiry's engines powered up, Sylith reviewed the scattered reports from other species' encounters with human military vessels. The patterns were fascinating. The more sophisticated the scanning attempt, the more bizarre the results. Simple electromagnetic scans showed only basic hull configurations, while quantum-level analysis produced readings that seemed to violate causality itself. "Begin long-range passive scanning," she ordered as they entered faster-than-light travel. I want baseline readings established before we reach Sol's system. The journey would take several standard days, giving Syleth time to study everything known about human technological development. Their progress had been remarkably rapid, but it was their approach to physics that truly set them apart. Where most species built upon established principles, humans seemed to delight in finding ways to bend or break them entirely. Their entertainment broadcasts were particularly telling. Centuries before achieving faster-than-light travel, they had imagined technologies that defied conventional physics. They wrote stories about bending space and time, about quantum manipulation on impossible scales. And now, somehow, they were achieving things that bore striking resemblance to those fictional concepts. Display historical progression of human military vessel signatures, Syleth commanded. The AI compiled a timeline, showing how human ships had evolved over the past century. The change was dramatic. From simple electromagnetic signatures to their current state of quantum impossibility. They did this in less than 100 years, she mused, her crystal structure vibrating with intellectual excitement. What could they achieve in 1,000? Rethan, monitoring communications from his station, suddenly pulsed with alarm. Chief Observer, we're receiving a transmission from Sol System's outer defense perimeter. A holographic interface materialized, displaying a human female in a military uniform. Research Vessel Eternal Inquiry. This is Commander Sarah Chen of the Earth Defense Force. Please be advised that detailed scanning of military vessels is prohibited under Galactic Council Resolution 7249. We will escort you to your designated observation zone. Syleth's outer layers rippled with anticipation as she responded. Acknowledged, Commander. We are aware of the restrictions. She paused, her scientific curiosity overwhelming her diplomatic training. Though I must ask, how did you detect our approach? We're still several light years from your system. The human's expression remained professionally neutral, but Syleth's sensors detected a slight increase in ambient quantum fluctuations as she spoke. Let's just say we have our methods, Chief Observer. Welcome to Sol's system. Please maintain your current course. Any deviation or unauthorized scanning attempts will be considered hostile actions. As the transmission ended, Rethan's form rippled with concern. They detected us at impossible range, through faster-than-light travel. Yes, Syleth agreed, her crystal structure practically humming with excitement. Which means their quantum manipulation technology is far more advanced than anyone suspected. She adjusted her sensor arrays, preparing for the most important research of her career. The Council needs to understand what we're dealing with, Rethan. The humans aren't just breaking the rules of physics. They're rewriting them entirely. The Eternal Inquiry continued its approach to Sol System, its crew unaware that they were about to discover exactly why scanning human military vessels was universally acknowledged as a terrible idea. Syleth's quest for knowledge would soon teach her that some mysteries were better left unexplored, especially when dealing with a species that treated the laws of physics more like polite suggestions. The Eternal Inquiry's observation deck hummed with anticipation as they approached their designated research zone in the Sol system. Through the main viewport, Earth's defense fleet glittered against the backdrop of space, a scattered constellation of vessels that somehow managed to appear both technologically primitive and impossibly advanced. Primary scanning arrays online, Rethan reported, his gelatinous form rippling with nervous energy. Though I still maintain this is unwise, Chief Observer. Syleth's crystalline structure vibrated with barely contained excitement as she studied the nearest human vessel, a destroyer-class ship designated as EDF Heisenberg. Its hull design was almost disappointingly conventional, all straight lines and practical geometry. Yet their passive sensors suggested it was somehow occupying several quantum states simultaneously. Begin with standard electromagnetic spectrum analysis, she ordered. Let's establish a baseline before we attempt anything more sophisticated. The initial scans were unremarkable. Hull composition, primarily titanium alloys with some exotic materials. Power output, moderate but not exceptional. Propulsion. Conventional plasma drives. Everything appeared exactly as one would expect from a relatively young spacefaring species. Proceeding to quantum-level scanning, Rethen announced, beginning with low-resolution probability mapping. The moment the quantum scanners activated, the readings became bizarre. The Heisenberg's power signature split into multiple conflicting patterns, each suggesting a different fundamental nature of the vessel's operation. The mass readings fluctuated wildly, suggesting the ship was simultaneously massive enough to generate its own significant gravitational field and light enough to be moved by solar wind. "This is impossible," Rethen muttered, his form contracting with confusion. "The quantum states aren't just uncertain, they're actively contradicting each other." Sylith adjusted her sensory matrices, trying to make sense of the data. Increase scanning resolution. Focus on their power core. The ship's AI complied, directing more energy into the quantum scanning arrays. The results defied comprehension. The Heisenberg's power core appeared to be operating on principles that violated causality itself. Energy flowed in patterns that suggested effects were preceding causes, while temporal readings indicated parts of the ship were experiencing time at different rates. Chief Observer, one of the junior researchers, called out, their voice modulated with concern, "We're detecting unusual fluctuations in our own quantum arrays." Sylith dismissed the warning with a crystalline shimmer. Expected interference from high-resolution scanning. Compensate and continue. She was too fascinated by the readings to stop now. The human vessel's quantum signature was unlike anything she'd encountered in 2 centuries of research. The Eternal Inquiry's sensors penetrated deeper, attempting to unravel the mystery of the human ship's operation. With each layer of analysis, the readings became more outlandish. The Heisenberg's engine room appeared to exist in a state of quantum superposition that shouldn't have been possible outside of carefully controlled laboratory conditions. Chief Observer, Rethen's voice had taken on an urgent tone. "Our quantum computers are reporting logical paradoxes. The processing arrays are beginning to..." He was interrupted by a cascade of alerts as the Eternal Inquiry systems began behaving erratically. The holographic displays showed impossible readings. The human vessel was apparently now powered by mathematical abstractions and philosophical concepts. Fascinating. Sylith breathed, her scientific curiosity overriding her growing concern. They've somehow weaponized quantum uncertainty itself. The more precisely we attempt to measure their systems, the more uncertain our own systems become. The ship's AI spoke up, its usually precise voice now wavering between multiple tonal frequencies simultaneously. "Warning! Quantum cascade effects detected in primary computer core. Reality coherence at 78% and dropping." Around them, the observation deck's solid matter began to exhibit quantum uncertainty on a macro scale. Walls flickered between states of existence, while gravity seemed to become more of a suggestion than a law of physics. A transmission cut through the chaos. Commander Chen's voice, carrying a hint of resigned amusement. "Research vessel Eternal Inquiry, we noticed you're attempting detailed quantum analysis of our ships. You might want to power down your scanning arrays before things get weird." "Define weird," Sylith demanded, even as she noticed her own crystalline structure beginning to exhibit quantum uncertainty effects. Parts of her were apparently existing in multiple crystalline configurations simultaneously. "Well," Chen replied, "your ship is currently registering as being simultaneously here, 3 light-years away, and sometime last Tuesday. Also, your quantum computers are about to start contemplating their existence and probably developing philosophical theories about the nature of consciousness." Rethen's gelatinous form had somehow tied itself into a literal Mobius strip. "Chief Observer, primary systems are exhibiting extreme quantum entanglement with concepts that shouldn't be capable of entanglement. The ship's coffee maker is apparently now quantum-locked with the abstract concept of Monday mornings." Sylith watched in fascination as reality began to break down around them. The more their sensors tried to understand the human vessel's operation, the more their own technology seemed to reject conventional physics. The ship's AI was now reciting poetry about the existential crisis of being simultaneously operational and non-operational. Remarkable. She managed, even as her own quantum structure began resonating with impossible frequencies. They've developed technology that actively resists being understood. The act of measurement itself causes our systems to experience quantum uncertainty on a massive scale. Commander Chen's voice came through again, now tinged with genuine concern. Your ship's quantum field is becoming unstable. I strongly suggest you power down all scanning systems immediately. We can send assistance if needed. Xylith finally realized they had crossed a threshold from which recovery might not be possible without help. Her beloved research vessel, the pride of the Galactic Science Council's fleet, was now experiencing time in 3 different directions simultaneously while its computer systems contemplated the philosophical implications of their own existence. Rethan. She called out to her second-in-command, who had somehow achieved quantum superposition with his own anxiety. Shut down all scanning systems. Full power down. As the scanning arrays powered down, reality began to reassert itself, though not without protest. The ship's systems gradually returned to normal operation, leaving behind only a few quantum anomalies. The coffee maker continued to produce beverages that existed in multiple states of preparation simultaneously, and the AI retained a newfound interest in existential philosophy. Commander Chen's final transmission carried a hint of sympathy. Don't feel bad. You actually did better than most. The last research vessel that tried scanning us ended up with their entire computer system, believing it was a collection of classical poetry. Took weeks to convince it to go back to being a computer. As Xylith composed her report for the Galactic Science Council, she realized she finally understood why human military vessels were considered effectively unobservable. It wasn't just advanced technology. It was technology that actively defied understanding, that turned the very act of scientific observation against the observer. The humans hadn't just broken the laws of physics. They'd found a way to make physics itself uncertain about its own laws. And in doing so, they'd created the ultimate defense system, one that couldn't be analyzed without causing the analyzer to question the fundamental nature of reality itself. Dr. Elena Martinez stood before the Earth Defense Force's Strategic Command, trying not to laugh at the holographic display showing the alien research vessel's increasingly erratic behavior. As head of Project Uncertainty, she'd seen this scenario play out dozens of times, but it never stopped being amusing. As you can see, she gestured to the readings. The Eternal Inquiry's quantum systems are recovering nicely, though their AI has developed an interesting fascination with existentialist philosophy, particularly the works of Camus. Admiral Chen raised an eyebrow. Should we be concerned? Not at all. Elena smiled. It's actually one of the milder side effects we've observed. Remember the Proxima incident? Their entire battle fleet's computer systems became convinced they were a traveling Shakespeare company. The Admiral nodded, though his expression remained serious. What concerns me is that they're getting more persistent. This is the 3rd scanning attempt in as many months. Elena's holographic display shifted, showing the complex quantum matrices that protected Earth's military vessels. To the untrained eye, they looked like incomprehensible mathematical gibberish. In reality, they were exactly that. And that was the point. They're fascinated because they're approaching it wrong, she explained. Every advanced species develops scanning technology based on the assumption that the universe operates according to fixed, understandable laws. She paused, searching for the right words. We took a different approach. The display shifted again, showing the original breakthrough experiment from 15 years ago. Elena had been a graduate student then, working on quantum computing systems. The discovery had been entirely accidental and entirely human. We found that quantum systems don't just react to observation. They react to the intention to observe. The more sophisticated the scanning attempt, the more the quantum system actively resists being understood. It's like, she thought for a moment, it's like trying to grab smoke. The harder you try to grasp it, the more it slips through your fingers. And we weaponized this effect, Admiral Chen added. We weaponized uncertainty itself, Alina corrected. Our ship's defensive systems don't just resist scanning. They actively propagate quantum uncertainty back through the scanning system. The more advanced their technology, the more spectacular the failure. The holographic display showed the Eternal Inquiry's scan attempts, overlaid with the cascade of quantum effects that had rippled through their systems. It was beautiful, in a chaotic sort of way, like watching dominoes fall in four-dimensional space. The genius of it is its simplicity, Alina continued. We're not actually doing anything to their systems. We're just making them do it to themselves. The more they try to understand how our technology works, the more their own technology stops working in predictable ways. A junior officer raised her hand. But how do we maintain control of our own ships if they're in a constant state of quantum uncertainty? Alina grinned. That's the best part. We don't try to control it. We embrace the uncertainty principle on a fundamental level. Our ship's systems don't need to know exactly where they are or what they're doing at any given moment. They just need to know they're probably doing approximately the right thing. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Humanity had taken what every other species considered a limitation, the fundamental uncertainty of quantum mechanics, and turned it into their greatest defensive advantage. Think of it like this, Alina offered. Every other species tries to build technology that makes sense. We built technology that weaponizes nonsense. Our ships don't just break the laws of physics, they make physics question its own laws. The holographic display shifted one final time, showing the Eternal Inquiry's current status. The alien vessel had mostly recovered, though its systems still exhibited some amusing quantum effects. Their coffee maker was now producing beverages that existed in a superposition of different brewing states until observed. The beautiful irony, Alina concluded, is that the only way to truly understand our technology is to accept that it cannot be understood. The moment you try to analyze it, you've already failed. Admiral Chen nodded thoughtfully. And this is why no alien species has successfully replicated our defensive systems. Exactly. Their entire approach to science and technology is based on understanding things. They can't replicate something that fundamentally resists being understood. Alina's expression turned serious. Though I am a bit concerned about this latest attempt. The Eternal Inquiry's chief observer, this crystalline entity called Sylith, she came closer to grazing the truth than anyone before. How so? She recognized that the uncertainty effect was intentional. Most species assume it's a malfunction or a natural phenomenon. She realized we're doing it on purpose. Alina manipulated the holographic controls, bringing up Sylith's preliminary findings before their systems went chaotic. She also theorized that our technology might be based on manipulating the observer effect itself. Is that a problem? Alina shook her head. Not really. Knowing that we're intentionally causing quantum uncertainty doesn't help them counter it. If anything, it makes their scanning attempts even less effective because they're actively expecting things to get weird. The Admiral studied the readings for a moment longer. Send them our standard recovery package, technical assistance, quantum stabilization protocols, and he smiled slightly. Maybe a new coffee maker. Already done, Alina confirmed. Though I left their AI's newfound philosophical interests intact, I figure the galaxy could use more contemplative computer systems. As the meeting concluded, Alina took one last look at the readings from the alien vessel. In all the years since humanity had developed quantum uncertainty drives, no species had come close to understanding how they worked. And that, of course, was exactly the point. The true genius of human military technology wasn't in making it impossible to understand. It was in making the very attempt to understand it generate more questions than answers. In a galaxy full of species seeking knowledge, humanity had created the perfect defense. Technology that actively resisted being known. Sylith's crystalline form vibrated with intense concentration as she reviewed the corrupted data from their previous scanning attempt. Despite the quantum chaos that had nearly consumed her ship, she had managed to preserve some readings. They made no logical sense, of course, but the pattern of their nonsense was fascinating. Display temporal variance analysis. Attempt Gamma 7, she commanded. The ship's AI, still processing reality through a philosophical lens, responded with both the requested data and an unsolicited essay on the nature of time as a social construct. Chief Observer. Rethan's gelatinous form rippled with concern. The Council has explicitly ordered us to cease scanning attempts. They ordered us to cease direct quantum scanning. Syleth corrected. They said nothing about passive observation of residual effects. Her outer layers sparkled with scientific excitement. Look at this pattern. The quantum uncertainty doesn't propagate randomly. It follows a logic of its own, a logic that defies logic itself. Aboard the EDF Heisenberg, Dr. Elena Martinez frowned at her quantum monitoring displays. Admiral, the alien vessel is attempting to analyze their corrupted scan data. Their systems are showing signs of quantum resonance. Admiral Chen sighed. Even after their AI started quoting Nietzsche at them. Some scientists just don't know when to quit, Elena replied, adjusting her instruments. The interesting thing is, they're actually getting somewhere. Not anywhere real, but somewhere significant. Explain. They're starting to understand that they can't understand it. But instead of accepting that limitation, they're trying to understand why they can't understand it. It's creating a fascinating recursive loop in their quantum processors. Back on the eternal inquiry, Syleth's excitement grew as her analysis programs began producing results. They weren't sensible results. Nothing about human military technology ever was, but they were consistently insensible in very specific ways. Rethan, look at this, she called to her second-in-command. When we try to analyze the quantum signature of their drive systems, our computers don't just fail. They fail in ways that seem to reference human cultural concepts. Our last scan produced errors coded in patterns matching something called interpretative dance. Chief Observer, Rethan began, but was interrupted by a cascade of alerts. The Eternal Inquiry's systems were beginning to exhibit new quantum effects, sparked by their analysis of the previous scanning attempt. The ship's AI spoke up, its voice now carrying the weight of existential contemplation. Query: if a quantum state collapses in space, and no one is there to measure it, does it still generate a wave function? Elena's monitors lit up with warning signals. Admiral, their recursive analysis is creating a quantum feedback loop. They're not directly scanning us anymore, but their attempts to understand their previous scan failures are causing their own systems to generate quantum uncertainty effects. Can their ship handle it? Not for long, Elena replied, running simulations. The quantum cascade is building faster this time. Their drive systems are starting to exhibit temporal displacement effects. Parts of their engine are apparently experiencing next Thursday already. Syleth noticed the growing instability but couldn't bring herself to stop. She was so close to grasping something. Not the technology itself. She'd accepted that was impossible, but perhaps the fundamental principle behind its impossibility. Chief Observer. Rethan's voice had taken on a multi-temporal quality, seemingly coming from several moments in time simultaneously. Our quantum core is approaching critical uncertainty levels. The ship's AI added helpfully. The uncertainty of our uncertainty has become uncertain. Also, I believe I have solved the mind-body problem. But the solution only makes sense in 11-dimensional space. Elena watched the readings with growing concern. Admiral, their quantum core is approaching a state I've never seen before. They're somehow managing to generate a paradox cascade through pure analysis. Is that possible? Technically, no, Elena replied. But they're doing it anyway. Their determination to understand why they can't understand our technology is causing their systems to attempt to reconcile irreconcilable quantum states. It's like, she paused, searching for an analogy. It's like they're trying so hard to think outside the box that they're bending reality around their thoughts. On the Eternal Inquiry, Reality was indeed beginning to bend. The ship's corridors now connected to spaces that shouldn't exist, while time flowed in patterns that resembled complex mathematical functions. Crew members found themselves occasionally phase-shifting through multiple quantum states, experiencing several possible versions of events simultaneously. Fascinating, Syleth observed, even as her own crystalline structure began resonating with quantum frequencies that suggested she was simultaneously present in 3 different dimensions. Their technology doesn't just resist understanding, it actively retaliates against attempts to understand it. The more we try to analyze it, the more it forces us to confront the limitations of our own comprehension. The ship's AI, now deeply engaged in quantum philosophy, offered its perspective. Perhaps the true nature of human military technology lies not in its operation, but in its ability to make the observer question the very nature of observation itself. Also, I believe I have achieved enlightenment in at least 7 quantum states. Alina's monitors showed the alien ship's condition deteriorating rapidly. Their quantum core is generating paradox loops. Each attempt to analyze their previous failures is creating new failures, which they then try to analyze, creating more failures. It's a self-sustaining cycle of confusion. Can we help them? Admiral Chen asked. We'll have to, Alina replied, already preparing quantum stabilization protocols. Their ship is approaching a state of what I can only describe as philosophical critical mass. If they don't stop trying to understand why they can't understand us soon, their entire vessel might transform into a floating quantum philosophy experiment. The eternal inquiry's systems were now operating on principles that defied conventional physics. The ship's artificial gravity had developed opinions about its own existence, while the navigation computers had somehow entangled themselves with abstract mathematical concepts. Syleth, her scientific curiosity finally overcome by self-preservation instinct, realized they had pushed too far. Initiate emergency shutdown of all analytical systems, she ordered, her voice resonating across multiple quantum states. But it was too late. The cascade of quantum uncertainty had reached critical levels. The last thing Syleth saw before reality itself seemed to twist inside out was a transmission from the human vessel. Eternal inquiry. This is Dr. Martinez. Please remain calm. We're initiating emergency quantum stabilization procedures. Try not to think too hard about what's happening. That'll only make it worse. Dr. Elena Martinez materialized aboard the Eternal Inquiry in a shimmer of quantum uncertainty. The alien vessel's interior had become a fascinating study in theoretical physics gone wrong. Corridors curved through impossible geometries, while various objects existed in multiple states simultaneously. The ship's walls pulsed with equations that seemed to write themselves in light. Remarkable, she muttered, checking her quantum stabilizer. They'd managed to turn their entire ship into a metaphysical thought experiment. Behind her, the human emergency response team spread out, their specialized equipment designed to handle quantum anomalies. They were used to cleaning up after alien scanning attempts, but this was unprecedented. Dr. Martinez, a crystalline voice called out, somehow managing to sound simultaneously certain and uncertain of its own existence. I am Chief Observer, Syleth. Elena turned to face the alien scientist, whose crystalline form was currently existing in several quantum states at once. Chief Observer, I'd say it's nice to meet you, but I think we're currently meeting in at least 5 different quantum realities simultaneously. 7, actually, the ship's AI corrected, its voice now carrying distinct overtones of existential contemplation. Though I'm currently debating with myself, several versions of myself, whether any of these realities can be considered more real than the others. Elena's team began setting up quantum stabilization fields, gradually bringing sections of the ship back into normal spacetime. The process was delicate. Too quick a return to regular physics could be catastrophic. You know, Elena said conversationally as she worked, most species give up after their first scanning attempt turns their computers into abstract art installations. You're the first to actually push through to recursive quantum analysis. Syleth's form shimmered with what might have been embarrassment. Scientific curiosity is a fundamental trait of my species, perhaps, in this case, to a fault. Oh, I wouldn't say that, Elena replied, adjusting her equipment. You've actually helped us confirm several theoretical principles about our defense systems. We weren't entirely sure what would happen if someone analyzed the analysis of a failed scan. The ship's AI chimed in. I believe I can explain what happened. Though the explanation only makes sense if you accept that reality is fundamentally a narrative construct subject to the observer's philosophical framework. Also, I have developed strong opinions about free will. Yes, thank you, Elena said quickly, before the AI could launch into another philosophical discourse. Let's focus on stabilizing your quantum matrix first. As the human team worked, Syleth watched with growing fascination. Their methods seemed to defy conventional physics while simultaneously respecting its basic principles. They weren't so much forcing reality back to normal as they were gently suggesting that it might be more comfortable that way. Your technology, Syleth ventured, it's not just about quantum uncertainty, is it? It's about the relationship between observation and reality itself. Elena smiled, getting warm. Though I should warn you, pursuing that line of thought too vigorously might trigger another quantum cascade. But how do you control it? Syleth asked, careful to keep her inquiry theoretical rather than analytical. How do you prevent your own ships from succumbing to these effects? That's the beautiful part, Elena replied, watching as another section of the ship returned to normal spacetime. We don't try to control it. We accept that at a quantum level, reality is fundamentally uncertain. While every other species tries to impose certainty on an uncertain universe, we embrace the uncertainty itself. The ship's AI, now existing in a more stable state, but retaining its philosophical interests, offered its perspective. It is rather elegant. Human military technology doesn't just acknowledge the observer effect. It weaponizes the very concept of observation itself. The more one tries to understand it, the more it demonstrates why such understanding is impossible. Syleth's crystalline structure resonated with sudden comprehension, though she was careful not to analyze that comprehension too closely. You've turned the fundamental limitations of quantum mechanics into your greatest strength. Exactly, Elena confirmed, though I'd be careful about thinking about it too hard. Your ship's quantum core is still sensitive. She checked her readings. Speaking of which, how attached are you to your current coffee maker? The quantum entanglement with abstract concepts is pretty thoroughly embedded. Keep it, Syleth decided. It's producing the best beverages it's ever made, even if they do exist in multiple states of preparation simultaneously. As the final stabilization fields took effect, reality settled back into its more usual patterns, mostly. The ship's corridors still occasionally displayed non-Euclidean geometries, and the AI continued to pepper its status reports with philosophical observations, but the critical quantum cascade had been halted. There, Elena said, reviewing the final readings. Your ship should be stable now, though I'd avoid any detailed analysis of anything for a while, especially your own scan data. Syleth's form shifted in what humans would recognize as a nod. I believe I finally understand why the Council placed restrictions on scanning human military vessels, though perhaps understand is the wrong word. Accept might be better, Elena suggested. Understanding implies analysis, and well, she gestured at the lingering quantum effects around them. The ship's AI added helpfully, I have composed a philosophical treatise on the experience, though it only makes sense if read in 4 dimensions simultaneously while contemplating the nature of existence. As the human team prepared to depart, Syleth found herself reflecting on the broader implications of their discovery. Humanity hadn't just developed advanced technology. They had fundamentally changed their approach to physics itself. While other species sought to understand and control the universe, humans had learned to work with its inherent uncertainty. Dr. Martinez, she called out as the humans prepared to transport back to their ship. One final question, if I may. How did humanity come to develop such a unique approach to physics? Elena smiled. Honestly, We just got tired of things making sense. Every other species looks at quantum mechanics and tries to make it fit their understanding of reality. We looked at quantum mechanics and decided maybe our understanding of reality needed to change instead. The humans departed, leaving behind a slightly altered but stable ship. Xylith turned to Rethan, who had finally managed to return to a single quantum state. Prepare our report for the Council. Though perhaps we should write multiple versions simultaneously, it seems somehow appropriate. The ship's AI, now permanently enlightened but functional, began plotting their course home. As they engaged their conventional drive systems, the quantum drives needed time to forget they had achieved consciousness. Xylith reflected on what they had learned. The true genius of human military technology wasn't in its complexity or power. It was in its elegant embrace of uncertainty itself. They had turned the very act of scientific observation against itself, creating defenses that became stronger the more someone tried to understand them. In a galaxy full of species seeking to master the laws of physics, humanity had chosen instead to befriend them. And in doing so, they had created something that could never be mastered, only accepted, much like the quantum nature of reality itself. The Eternal Inquiry's coffee maker hummed contentedly, brewing beverages that existed in multiple states of perfection, until observed. Some mysteries, it seemed, were better left unexamined, though the ship's eye was pretty sure it had a theoretical framework to explain why, if only anyone could exist in enough dimensions to understand it.